Are you ready for rapid fire?
I am ready for rapid fire, and I've been waiting for this actual moment all day. It is a birthday fire. It is someone's birthday in the house. I went through the chat. I realized it wasn't noticed or brought up, and I figured what better time to say happy birthday.
Well, thank you very much. I did notice, like I got a text from Vince today, and like other people I got texts from. Hadn't heard from my only son
I was
before
waiting for
now,
this
but
moment. What better way to tell you than live face to face on the show?
all right. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tom, for the reminder. Hit that like button. I don't know what you're doing if you're just sitting there chilling, but hit the like button. Thank you very much, Josh. I wore this just for my birthday. I just got this Pearl Jam t-shirt. I like it because at the bottom it says alive. So the older we get, that's it's the simple things, right? Much appreciated for all the birthday wishes. Thank you very much, Jesse, as well. Let's get down to some business though, because it's been a couple of weeks since you've done some rapid fire. So Irish defensive back Jordan Clark spoke with the media after practice Tuesday. Not surprisingly, what do you think came up? The unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that he got for his headbutt against Louisville a couple of weeks ago. Here is what Jordan Clark said. Now, I'm combining a couple of different quotes here, so there's kind of a lot, but I'm combining them just so you know that it wasn't just like one long continuous quote. But he says, ultimately, I can't cost my team 15 yards regardless of what happens. I'm never going to let somebody spit on me. I'm never going to let anybody punch me, but 15 yards is unacceptable. Coach Free and I talked about it with Coach Golden and Coach Mick. I don't want to hurt my team in any way, but I'll never let anybody spit on me or punch me in my face. After he spit in my face, I told the official, Coach Free told the official, I guess he said that he didn't see it and he didn't do anything about it. Ultimately, that's out of my control. Football is a very physical game. I have ample time between the whistle to figure things out and handle things that way. That's what I'll do next time. And that's a quote from Jordan Clark. So, Jess, satisfied with that response?
Yeah, I am satisfied with that response, and I get it. It's a tough spot to be in, but you can never react during a game. I think that's a situation that ultimately you handle when the game is over. If you got something to say, or if you want to get into any other extracurriculars, I think that's you wait until it's not going to affect the game and maybe potentially the outcome of a drive, et cetera, et cetera. So I get it. It sucks. Like, no one wants to be spit on, and I think a lot of people have morals and values. But if you told the referee and the referee said he didn't, see anything, they're not going to change it. They're not going to just, randomly throw a 15-yard penalty. You just kind of have to get over it, be the bigger person. And again, after the game, you could probably say something or maybe slap the guy on the head or, whatever you want to do, just not during the game.
I mean, literally, if you wanted to get into a fight after the game, there's no penalty to be there's no flag to be thrown at that point, right? But like I've said all along, I mean, the best remedy, especially you're in a close game the way they were, all those different things. And I know that it can be hard when something like that happens, because I don't think that there are many things that are more disrespectful than literally one man or one person spitting in another person's face, So like, I understand the anger that Jordan Clark must have had, but just like he said, and like the conversation obviously went with his coaches, 15 yards in that situation when you're trying to win a game, when Louisville's, that close to mounting a comeback, that could have been a huge, huge call in that game. And they're fortunate, one, because of his play, because he was playing so well also, but they're very fortunate that they were ultimately able to overcome that, hold on, and win the game. But I think, he said the right things. He did the right things. And now he's just got to show that if it happens again, which I would have to say, there's probably a pretty good chance that it will, because other teams find out that you can kind of get in this guy's head. I imagine, hopefully you don't see guys, spitting at anybody, but, I think that they're going to be trying their best to to get into Jordan Clark's head and see, what they can prompt out of him. But his response, that's all you can ask. And I mean, I also think, like I was quite honestly a little surprised when I saw that Jordan Clark was going to be on the, player availability list, because you knew this was going to come up. So like I commend Notre Dame for making him available and Jordan Clark for making himself available to come out and answer these questions about that, because it's college and you don't have to come out, like you're in the NFL. If you don't want to talk to the media, you don't have to. So I appreciate the fact that he did come out and address it. And, again, he said the right thing. So good enough. Just make sure it doesn't happen again. So Fighting Irish running back Jadarian Price was benched for the rest of the game after his first half fumble against Louisville. Here's what Marcus Freeman said about Price's response this week.
We have a lot of confidence. He'll respond the right way. There's obviously Coach McCullough and our program has standards for the running back room and holding on to the ball, and similar with what happened with Audric last year when we played Navy. And but Jadarian Price will be the first one to come up here and tell you that's the standard of that room, is to always hand the ball to the official. And but there's so much confidence we have in him as a running back, and giving him the ball. And he's going to do great things this week and future weeks moving ahead.
All right, so there's Marcus Freeman on Jadarian Price. Are you good with Price? This is something, it's like we've had a bye week. So like every issue that came up during the Louisville game, you essentially have 2 weeks to talk about it instead of just one. This came up on the Champions Lounge within the last couple of days. Are you good with Price sitting out the rest of the game after the fumble, Jess?
No, I'm not good with that. I do believe, you can set a standard in your room, and all of that. But if they were going to bench Jadarian Price, I would have liked to see an uptick in Jeremiah Love's carries and less Aeneas Williams, if we're being honest with you. I thought Aeneas Williams was on the field too much. He was on the field too much during critical drives, critical third downs. And I just don't like it. I think you can. I think I would have been okay with like a quarter. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe a half until halftime, and then he comes back out in the second half, just enough to kind of sit down, de-escalate from the situation, get refocused, and kind of build up that hunger to kind of come out and do good again. But I don't see the good in the rest of the game, because I think ultimately you're hurting your team. And I think that Notre Dame is better with Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love on the field. So I would have liked to see a quarter.
Yeah, I've got no problem with it. If that's the standard that Dylan McCullough wants to set for the running back room, and like Freeman said there in that soundbite, the same happened to Audric Estime before. Like if it's good enough for Audric Estime, essentially it's good enough for anyone. And there's a couple of different comments that we have here. Andrew says they treat Price so poorly. He's averaging less than 10 carries per game. He's the second best player on the offense. I mean, Love is still only averaging 11 or 12 carries per game, so it's not like he's getting a whole lot more. That's just the split right now. The fact that those two are splitting so much time, to your point, Jess, I would have liked to seen more of Jeremiah Love as well. But obviously, I guess they felt like they didn't want to, overtax him in that game. But if you're trying to win a game, I think that your best players need to be on the field at crunch time. And if Price was benched as the result of the fumble, then it should have been more Jeremiah Love. So like, I get your point. Like it shouldn't be as much Aeneas Williams, but it should have just been more Love and not necessarily Price. And then Tommy says running back fumbled and he's out the rest of the game. Quarterback fumbles and crickets. Peanut. Well, you don't bench a quarterback for an interception either. Like unless it's a rash of interceptions, like let's not act like there's not a difference between the quarterback and literally any other position on the field. Like there's a difference if the quarterback fumbles and if the running back, the wide receiver, whoever it is, happens to fumble. Do you agree?
I do agree. Sorry, my dogs were ferociously barking. I didn't want anyone to have to hear that.
Well, so Price was benched for the rest of the game. Should Clark have been benched for his personal foul? Like, what do you think about that aspect of it?
No, I don't think that you should be benched. Well, For this personal foul, no. If you just, punch someone in the face or get into a brawl type situation, I think that's something that could land you on the bench for the rest of the game. But, you can't start doing that, because then are you going to bench guys for every personal foul? And then it kind of becomes, well, these personal fouls mean more than these personal fouls. So it's just like you're getting into a roughing the passer.
You can't bench everybody over the course of the game. Like, ball security is one thing, a mental error is another thing. And that's essentially what a personal foul is. It's a mental error. It's a lapse in judgment is what it is. You're not making the decision to fumble the ball or throw an interception. Those are physical mistakes. It's a mental lapse in judgment that led to the personal foul. So, and again, like where Notre Dame was with its secondary, with the depth and who was available, like, do you want to win the game or not? D'Lo McCullough had the luxury of benching Jadarian Price. Like there's a difference on the other side. Yeah, that's exactly right, Andrew. They are thin at DB.
I think that the whole fumbling thing is so overrated, if we're being honest with you.
Are you mad? Are you mad at Vince and your freshman high school running backs coach for the fumble that came up on the show last week? Are you still bitter at them?
Not bitter at them. I am bitter that it ended my offensive career. I thought that was a little bit dramatic, and I thought I'll just never forget what was said to me on the bus after the game as an analogy of what fumbling was like. It's not really repeatable on this show, but it was. I mean, it's funny to look back on, but I mean, seriously, unless a guy is fumbling like every single game or it's like a known issue, I just don't see the whole point of benching someone. Like, again, no one is perfect. Quarterbacks throw interceptions. Running backs are occasionally going to fumble. It's not like Jadarian Price has a fumbling issue where he's, fumbled before. And so I don't like that overall mentality. I see NFL guys like Kyron Williams fumbled this past Sunday, and they gave him the ball right, on their next drive, they gave it right back to him. And I get it. It's the NFL. They're professionals. But I think it's a little bit childish, if we're being honest, to bench a guy just because of a fumble.
I mean, if you have a certain standard, you have to find a way to reinforce, whether positively or negatively, what is going to bring about that behavior. And obviously, if you want to play, you're going to think twice about your ball security. If the result is you sit out for an entire game. And again, it worked with Andre Estime before. Like, remember, he had 2 years ago against Stanford. He had that fumble, and then he sat out after that. He paid the price. He learned his lesson. Again, like the whole reinforcement thing, this is same but different. But like when you were young and you were playing Pop Warner football, the thing that, like officials are always going to miss calls, it's like, oh, you like holding or motion or offsides, whatever. But the thing that annoyed me the most, and this continued even into high school, is things like a late hit out of bounds, a helmet to helmet contact that the officials would not call. And it's, like, again, like at the Pop Warner level, their excuse is, well, they're young, they're still learning. Well, my point would be, if you don't want them, if the emphasis is because you don't want helmet to helmet hits. So if you want to discourage a young football player from making a helmet to helmet hit, what's the best way to start to reinforce that? You have to throw the flag. You can't just let it go. Otherwise, it's just going to go on all the time. And, again, same but different, but I really don't see a whole lot of difference with the fumble thing. If you're emphasizing ball security and you don't want your guys to fumble, I don't have a problem with them handling it in that way.
I get what you're saying. I just think the rest of the game is extensive. I'm okay with the series or a quarter. I don't think it needs to be the entire game, considering the leverage of the moment and needing your best players on offense.
Sure.
That's where I'm at.
Yep, I get that as well. And I think Vince kind of took that same stance as well, even if he was completely still willing to throw you under the bus for your misgivings as a freshman fullback.
The one mistake I ever made, like it was, and let's just throw it out there too, and it probably wasn't stated. It was raining that day. It was a rainy game. The ball was slick the day I fumbled. It wasn't like the perfect.
Well, it was
ideal
slick when Price fumbled as well.
conditions.
It was slick when Price, it was rainy out there too. Yeah. Okay, so here's Mike Denbrock on Riley Leonard during the bye week. Quote, I think what's most exciting to me is the continued growth of confidence and understanding of what we're doing. I think we've seen kind of glimpses of what it can really kind of turn into and become here. And we're at about the point in the season where it's time for that to kind of kick into gear. I've seen that progress over the last couple of games. Now that's continued into last week, continued into this week, and hoping that translates to the way we play on Saturday. End quote, Mike Denbrock. So, Jesse, that says blank to you.
That says that Riley Leonard wasn't ready to run this offense at the beginning of the season. What Denbrock to me is saying is I think he had, a pretty expansive playbook. And, we all know Riley Leonard had to sit out a spring ball. And I think fall camp wasn't enough for Riley Leonard in terms of integrating the offense and kind of, synchronizing their relationship of what plays work for Riley Leonard, what plays are going to work for Mike Denbrock. And allowing, Riley Leonard to ultimately grow in this offense. I just think that they needed a little bit more time, some time to kind of some trial by air, if we're being honest, right? And the first trial by air that happened was the NIU game, and we all saw how that game ended. But on the flip side of that, I think it's something to be excited about because I think that I seriously believe from NIU until the last game of the season, Riley Leonard's progression is only going to get better and better. He's only going to be a better quarterback game by game. And if he does show regression consistently, then I think it's something to worry about, right? But I think that NIU game really stuck out because Mike Denbrock and Riley Leonard just weren't on the same page of this is what works and this is what doesn't work, right? And so now that they've had this time to, especially with the bye week to get healthy, to, get more into the playbook and have those discussions about what's good and what's not good, I think that's going to go a long way for Riley Leonard.
Yeah. Mike Denbrock was telling us all along, like going back to fall training camp, that this might take a while. I think that we overlooked a lot of it because we looked at Riley Leonard's talent, and quite frankly, we kind of overlooked the fact that he missed the entire spring and that things were still coming together. But again, Mike Denbrock was telling us this in training camp when he said, week 6 or 7 is going to look a lot different than week 1 or 2. And he didn't come out and say the things like, well, we've got to get on the same page, even though he did, a week or 2 into the season. It might have been after NIU we started hearing more of that about we've got to get on the same page. And it sure appears that they are much closer to the same page right now. And if you look at the calendar, even though this is game 6, it is week 7 because, they had some time during the bye week to practice as well. So like, to me, it means, again, like I'm not expecting all of a sudden that we're going to see Kenny Stabler out there or John Elway, like just winging it downfield and hitting all these deep shots. But I am expecting that we're going to start to see a more efficient looking Riley Leonard and a more efficient and balanced looking Notre Dame offense. And it starts with this week. So I think this is a really big week for both of them, because as Trevor and I were talking about at the start of the show, like this is an opportunity against this specific opponent that you have to take advantage of. This is not a game that should be particularly close, and it would be a major disappointment if it is particularly close, like a fourth quarter game, like we're coming down to the wire, like a 10-point game or something like that. So it's a really big opportunity for Notre Dame's offense and Riley Leonard to step up.
Well, it's an opportunity as a whole for the team. Stanford is, what they've been the last 5 to 10 years is not what they were the previous 10 to 20 years before that. But Stanford is still a consistent opponent on the schedule. They are a rival. And it's something, regardless of record, you should take pride in showing up and playing a good game. Again, regardless of how good or not good Stanford is.
So, whoops, I had something wrong there. NCAA and Indy Sailor, I saw your comment. We did talk about the NLI stuff before you got here, but we'll readdress that now that we're getting into some of this stuff. So the NCAA approved some different changes yesterday. One of them is to keep both the winter and spring transfer portals for college football. So they're not going to eliminate the spring transfer portal. You're still going to have a winter portal in December. You're still going to have a spring portal in April, but they're going to shorten it. The winter portal is going to be 20 days. It'll run from December 9th, which is the Monday after the conference championship games. It'll run through December 28th. The spring portal is going to be open for 10 days from April 16th through the 25th. So, do you buy or sell this move?
I ultimately buy this move. I like the idea of having a portal at the end of the season. You have a full body of work. You can assess, where you kind of stand and what the best move is for you. And I like the spring portal as well because, you have a good idea coming out of spring practice where you are in the depth chart going into the fall. If we're being quite honest, right? And if you are at that 3 or 4 spot, or maybe not even, maybe you're in that 5 spot. There's just so many opportunities these days with NIL and with the transfer portal that you can go somewhere and play, even if it's at a lower level school or whatever the circumstance might be. My only rule with the portal would be I just wish that if you transferred, you had to stick it out for a certain amount of period of time. I don't like guys who are just transferring, basically at the semester. Like they could be at 2 schools within an academic calendar year. I think within the academic calendar year, you should be held to you have to stay at a place for like a full season, essentially, right?
Well, then what's the purpose of having the winter portal? If what's the purpose of having the winter portal if you're going to say and you should have to stay for the entire year?
Because that's what I mean. I think that like it still could be like say you transferred in last winter, then you shouldn't be able to leave in the spring portal. You should have to wait until the next winter portal comes up, and vice versa.
Okay.
Like if you come in during the spring portal, I don't think that you should be able to leave, basically at that December portal. I would like it where you leave the portal if you do decide to leave in the same portal that you came essentially a year later.
I see what you're saying.
I'm getting at.
So if you transfer one spring, you have to wait till the next spring to leave if that's what you decide to do, rather than just like you play one season and then middle of the year you can bolt again. I get that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Chronicles of Narnia. These guys are just going in and out of the door whenever they want. I just think that there should be, some sort of obligation to kind of, be at that school for a term and whatever that term length would be.
The Chronicles of Narnia. So I will buy this because I do think there needs to be 2 portals. You need the December portal to give guys the opportunity, if they want to transfer, to head out and join a new team and be able to go through spring practice with them. But I also feel like you still need this spring portal. That was what I couldn't get past when they were talking about, like, you still need to be able to give these guys the opportunity after you go through spring and you're competing for a job and you find out where you are on the depth chart. You still have to give them an opportunity to head out if that's what they decide to do. So, so I like this. I don't think it should create, that much change by shortening the windows on these portals. I think that ultimately you needed to keep both. And that's what I was, most looking at. Were they going to keep the spring portal? It just feels like you needed to have both of them. I get what you're saying about, you need to, like, if you come in one winter portal, you have to wait to the next winter portal, or, spring and spring. But I definitely think they needed to keep both of them around. Now, we did talk about this during the mailbag, but we'll go ahead and bring this up again. Indy Sailor says, just got here. Any discussion earlier on the NCAA's elimination of the national letter of intent? We did talk about it a little bit. And the big thing with this, Indy Sailor and anyone else who maybe joined late, is The reason they're getting rid of, the NLI, what has been known for 60 years as the National Letter of Intent, is because the model is going to change in college football because of this revenue sharing model that they're going to. Now, it's not going to be a system where no one is signing to go to Notre Dame or Alabama or Miami or anybody else, and like it's some kind of willy-nilly free agent system where you wait until training camp starts and you're signing free agent contracts and that kind of stuff. There is still going to be a signing period, and players will still sign their commitments to their schools, but instead of calling it a national letter of intent, it is essentially, they'll have a different name for it, and it's going to be some kind of contract, basically, because of the revenue sharing model that's coming. So they're like, guys are still going to sign. I say, because we're talking about football, guys are still going to sign regardless of sport. Players are still going to sign on the dotted line. It's just not going to be called a national letter of intent anymore. There's going to be some formal, whether they actually literally call it a contract or not, they're just going to call it something else because there's going to be money involved now with the revenue share. So that's why they're changing the name. Robert Saleh, Jess, became the first NFL head coach to be fired this season. Who is next on the hot seat, do you think, as you shift in and out of the darkness and the light?
I would say, really, this is fun. I think that outside of the Commanders, the entire NFC East is kind of on watch between Sirianni, McCarthy, and Dable. I mean, seriously.
I had forgotten about Sirianni because I kind of made a little short list in my head. I forgot about, but he's got to be on there as well.
They have done nothing but regress since their Super Bowl appearance. And I would say that felt like the 2016 Cubs to me. A team that, yes, even though the Cubs won the World Series, I felt like their window was more so 2 to 3 years, and they didn't really capitalize on the window. And I think the same goes for the Eagles. And I think Sirianni thinks he's a great coach who's always making the right decision in the right moment. And I think he overthinks it. Instead of, there's a lot of going for it instead of taking points. He's a very arrogant-minded coach who is willing to take the risk a lot. And I'm okay with that, but I still think risks need to be calculated. And I still feel like the Eagles did not fully, capitalize on their window, essentially. And then when it comes to the Giants, I mean,
if they're even hovering around 500, because they obviously signed Jalen Hurts to a long-term contract. I mean, I think they're going to keep the quarterback over the head coach at this point.
Yeah, and I think that I think they're one of the best run organizations in football. They have a GM that actively tries to trade, that is good at, their contracts. I just think that the coach is replaceable at this point. And then, with the Giants, it's like, how long are you going to let them be bad? They haven't shown any signs of, getting better. In my opinion, the best thing they got for him is Malik Neighbors, and he's currently, hurt right now. And then Mike McCarthy in Dallas, you can't continue to be around a 500 team and lose in the first round of the playoffs. It's an organization that hasn't done anything since 1996. So, there's just you got to be better. And then outside of the NFC East, I think Zach Taylor for the Bengals is ultimately on the hot seat as well.
I think he is too.
A team that went to the Super Bowl, and I get it. Joe Burrow's been hurt, and the situations that they've had at offensive line and wide receiver. But again, they just, at some point, you can't continue to regress. They're 1-4 this season. They should have beat the Commanders. They should have beat the Patriots. There's no reason that the Bengals should be 1-4 right now.
Isn't that the Patriots' only win, or did the Patriots win last weekend? I can't even remember now. I mean, they obviously won to open the season, but the Patriots have been horrible ever since then.
Yeah.
So,
and then someone in the chat brought up the Browns. I don't think the Browns are
Stefanski's a two-time coach of the year, including last year, because he got to the playoffs with Joe Flacco. They just saddled him with the wrong quarterback. That's not his fault. But that's the history.
Organization is
that's the history of the Browns is going with the wrong quarterback. So
I don't think it matters who would be the coach of the Browns right now. They're just not really well run. And like you said, they're stuck with a quarterback that no one wants. I think Jameis Winston would give them a better opportunity at winning right now.
Yeah. I've actually heard Mike McDaniel in hot seat talk. And it's
No,
like they lost too much on defense, and then obviously Tua gets hurt. There's no way you can pin that on McDaniel in that short amount of time. You know, what they lost from defense from a year ago, you know, like there's no way that he's on the hot seat. But like the one that the two maybe that are the most connected are, you know, like what happens in New York with Daboll, and then Chicago and Matt Eberflus, because I'm just not convinced that Matt Eberflus is a head coach. And like, now, granted, there are issues with the Chicago Bears that, you know, most of it has to do with the fact that they'd never draft offensive linemen in the first round, and they should have drafted a stud offensive lineman rather than a wide receiver, a Dunze, that high in the draft. But, you know, everyone falls in love with the quarterback receiver combo. What's that done for him so far? What's Rome Odunze done so far? Nada. But I'm still not convinced, you know, like watching that Hard Knocks, there was nothing that screamed like, this is the guy when I was watching Matt Eberflus, you know, and connect that to Daboll. Like if I'm the Bears, I'm sitting back and I'm watching in like, do the Giants stick with Daboll? They probably will, because I think that they'll, you know, give him at least one more year after this. But if the Giants decided to move on from Brian Daboll and I'm the Chicago Bears sitting there, I would make that move in a heartbeat to pair him up with Caleb Williams. But Doug Peterson in Jacksonville is another one that I'd put on the hot seat. But I agree with the list that you had as well. Like Peterson, 9-8 the last 2 years, 1-4 this year. I mean, it's still crazy to believe that guy won a Super Bowl not that long ago. How about college? Who's got the hottest seat in college, do you think, right now?
You know, the obvious answers are Napier and Norvell, the Florida and Florida State head coaches. So I'm not even going to really get into that.
I don't think Norvell, though. I think Norvell gets a pass for this year, but Napier for sure. For sure.
I would say at the moment, Hugh Freeze down at Auburn. I think it was controversial and kind of a risk to bring him in, and it hasn't paid off. And, you know, obviously Auburn's in the SEC. I do believe that, you know, those those boosters want to win now. And you're talking about an Auburn program that, you know, they're always, while they might not be relatively great every season, they're not bad. You know what I mean? There's a difference between a bad team and a team that's it's still objectively good. And I just feel like Auburn is pretty bad right now. And then the other name that came to mind,
just to your point, you know, they were 6-7 last year in Hugh Freeze's first year. They're 0-3 in the SEC right now, 2-4 overall. In his first three head coaching stops, Liberty, Ole Miss, Arkansas State, he had winning records right out of the gate, but he is not moving the needle at all in Auburn so far. And when you look at all this other external stuff that comes with it, good luck Deuce Knight.
Yeah, and then the last one that I would say is, and that's okay. That's the part about Deuce Knight that is so confusing to me is, like, Notre Dame at least has a proven track record of consistency, and what you can develop into and the educational aspect. What is Auburn showing you right now that's like, man, I really want to go there? You know, like that's the really confusing part to me on the side of Deuce Knight. And if you think about
just
it,
honestly,
like that,
the ability to play right away, apparently,
and the money.
Yep.
And so if that's what you want to take, more to you, but I just feel like that's not the best decision for Deuce Knight at the end of the day. But the next coach that I would say is Mac Brown at North Carolina.
I feel like he's going to just retire. Yeah.
He had Drake May, you know, like that covered a lot of stuff for him. Like their defenses were so bad, but at least they had Drake May on offense where they could get in shootouts and win majority of these games, right? But no Drake May. I don't think he's the recruiter that he used to be. I think he's getting, you know, old age is catching up to him. And there were rumors that he was already going to be done a couple of weeks ago. So I just feel like it's got to be Mac Brown.
Yep. I agree. He's at the top. Somebody said Ryan Walters. He sure seems like he's on the hot seat right now at Purdue. Jeff says add Lincoln Riley to the mix if they end up 7-5 or worse. I think he puts himself on the hot seat going toward next year if that happens, but I don't think like his job is on the line if they end up 7-5 or worse this year. It would obviously be a step back each of the last 2 years after the first year that they had when they went to the Cotton Bowl. But I don't think Riley, I don't think his job is on the line right now. Like that is still a program that's got to be rebuilt now to compete in a more physical conference than they were used to competing in. I mean, hello, Minnesota.
I saw something the other day that Lincoln Riley has the same record in the first 30 games as what Clay Helton had at USC, but it felt like USC ran out Clay Helton for some. And all I'm going to say on the USC note is they haven't gotten it right since Pete Carroll left. They've got the names. They've gotten Lane Kiffin. They've gotten Steve Sarkisian. They've gotten, Lincoln Riley. To me, it's more of maybe an administration or athletic department issue and not necessarily a head coach issue. Because when
it absolutely is. Yeah.
I mean, look at the success
because they've gone through a lot of athletic directors in the meantime as well.
So, and I get it. Lane Kiffin also had stuff going on outside of football, but I mean, look what he's done at Ole Miss. Look at what Sarkisian has done. At Texas, obviously, Ed Orgeron was an interim head coach. We saw what he did, at LSU and winning it. Like there have been good coaches that have gone through USC since Pete Carroll. So I think it's more of the whole program and not necessarily who the head coach is at the end of the day.
I can't disagree with that. I'll just add one other guy to the list, Dave Aranda down at Baylor. He's on his way to his third straight losing season. They're 0-3 in the Big 12 right now after winning the Sugar Bowl just 3 years ago. That the year that what would that have been? 2021, the year that Marcus Freeman ended up taking over. Remember Oklahoma State and Baylor played in the Big 12 championship game that year, and Notre Dame obviously ended up playing Oklahoma State in the Fiesta Bowl. But it's been from 12-2 to now this is going to be losing season 3 in a row for Dave Aranda. So I think that he is pretty hot right now as well. I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't make it through the entire season, because that's like for a school, other than obviously the men's and women's basketball teams have won national championships, fairly recently, but like that's a school with big time expectations for no more, overall accomplishments than that school has from an athletic standpoint. They've got big expectations. They've sunk a ton of money into it, and money's going to ultimately talk. So I think Dave Aranda is pretty hot right now as well. Well, I think that's going to do it for tonight, Jess. It was good to have you back.
Birthday edition.
That's right. I should have lit or you should have lit a candle maybe and brought it in. You almost look like your face is candlelit right now.
Yeah, this is like the worst time of the year when it starts to get dark earlier in the day, because then my natural lighting goes down, and I haven't had the opportunity to set up my like new in-home kind of workstation. When I left the old job, I had to give a lot of my equipment back, and so I don't really have a work from home setup right now at the moment. It's just me and the laptop.
Yes, and I've tried to tell you before, the backlighting with the window behind you doesn't do any favors either. So
it's the only spot in the room or in the house that I can really go.
All right, that's going to do it for tonight. Good questions in the mailbag tonight. Don't forget, tomorrow is We In, We Out Thursday. We start tomorrow's show with some comments from Marcus Freeman from his noon Zoom media call, and then we will have some We In, We Out, and of course we wrap it up with rapid fire as well. So look for that thread on the New Champions Lounge tonight to submit your We In, We Out questions, and then we'll answer them tomorrow. Good stuff. Hit that like button, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.